This is Rob Tubbett for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Adam Smith. We're here at the Ruiz-Joshua 2 press conference in London. Adam, how you doing? You've been doing a bit of travelling.
We have been doing a lot of travelling. Yep, left here on Tuesday. I think we've taken in 4 or 5 different time zones, 3 continents, 4 cities, 30 odd hours in the air. Fantastic, exciting, different press tour. It's been great. We went to Saudi Arabia first, then via Dubai back to New York, and then here for the final leg. I spent a lot of time with AJ and his team, plenty of time as well with Andy Ruiz, his dad, and listen, they're great guys, they're great fighters, they're ready to go again, and I think it makes for an extraordinary rematch because no one quite knows what's going to happen, who's going to be favourite, who's going to prevail, is it going to be the same again, is it going to be totally different? It's in this, different setting in Saudi, neutral setting, in a stadium that's not yet been built, in a place that, a lot of us have not experienced before. I had 24 hours there. We were welcomed warmly. It was great to meet various people over there, and we look forward to going back and covering what will be an amazing sporting event.
What do you make of Saudi Arabia as a venue? Me and you have spoken at length in the past about Anthony Joshua's fights or the venues of his fights. I know you, as many other British people, would love to see him over here. We've also spoken about America in the past. Not sure we've ever spoken about the Middle East or Saudi Arabia. How do you feel about the fight being in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, well, plenty of people have come out and said it's a very controversial place. I understand that. I understand the feelings about that. First and foremost, we didn't make the decision. We wanted it in Cardiff. Anthony Joshua and his team decided that they wanted it in Saudi Arabia. They made the decision. We've backed Anthony Joshua from the very beginning. We've covered every single one of his professional fights. This is arguably the biggest of all. So obviously we're going to cover it and cover it to the best of our abilities. So look, it's a logistical challenge. It's got some difficulties, but I think having been there and making sure that I get the assurances that I want, our team will be confident that we can produce another a great show. But as I said, it's an event that we are covering because we've been with Anthony Joshua since 2013, and we're not stopping now.
What kind of assurances was it that you were looking for?
I want to make sure that the women on my team are comfortable and they can work to their professional abilities, and we're a team and we go as a team, whether we go to New York, whether we go to Cardiff, whether we go to Saudi Arabia. So that's very important for me, and I'm assured that will be the case, and that we look forward very much to a terrific event. But as I said, we're not responsible for the venue. That is very much the promoter Eddie Hearn and the fighter himself, Anthony Joshua. It was AJ's decision ultimately, I think, because I think we were going to go to Cardiff. The last hour Saudi Arabia came in. It's something different. I've always liked to challenge. It's been compared to other places around the world that have staged events like this. Obviously in boxing you've got the Rumble in the Jungle, the Thriller in Manila. So this is going to be iconic in its own way and very different. But from our point of view, it's a case of it's an Anthony Joshua fight, and that's why we're covering it.
From your point of view, being the broadcaster, what are your feelings when people start talking about the likes of sports washing, the human rights issues that have kind of plagued Saudi Arabia for a number of years now? In your position as head of Sky Sports, what do you make of those comments with a show that you're attached to?
I think, Rob, as I said, it's about Anthony Joshua. This isn't about politics. This is about sport. It's a sporting event. And as I said, whether it's in Cardiff or London or the Middle East, we do our best to produce it in the most professional way we can, with my team all around me. And that's what I mean. I've got a very mixed team, a diverse team, a team full of very brilliant women, and that's what I make sure that everybody is comfortable, everybody is allowed to work in their terrific ways, in their professional ways, and we want to make sure that we deliver this event on Sky Sports box office for our many customers, because it is an Anthony Joshua fight, which is probably the most important of his life. It's the rematch of a shock loss in June, and we all want to know what happens next in AJ's career. So it's about Anthony Joshua and sport, and that's the point I want to make. And once again, Rob, it wasn't our choice to go there. We're broadcasting the event, and you need to talk to Eddie and Anthony about why they chose Saudi. I think there's many reasons for it. But as I said, I went there and had a very warm welcome, and I'm looking forward to making sure that my team go back and we can do our jobs to the best of our abilities.
Appreciate that. And with that being said, but do you still understand fans and viewers of the sport and just sports fans in general, their reticence to see a show over in Saudi Arabia with these issues that have gone on in the country?
I totally understand. I mean, Saudi Arabia has had a lot of light shone on it for various reasons over the years, and some have been very difficult to accept. Look, they are trying, obviously, to put a lot of sporting events on. I learned a great deal going out there that Mariah Carey was recently performing, and they brought a lot of entertainment over to Saudi. I think there's a tennis event the week before, the week after we're there. They've had other sporting events in Saudi Arabia. Of course, they've had two boxing ones in the World Super Series final, and also in Amir Khan's recent fight. So this isn't a one-off. This isn't the first. I can understand the difficulties and the issues. I try and keep to the fact that it's an event that we cover, and it's a sporting event that is the fight is what matters, and we want to get on with that.
People will point to the fact that it is in Saudi Arabia. We've seen the money that's been ploughed into not just this sport but other sports by the Middle East. The cynics in the sport look at it as potentially a cash grab or a cash out aimed at Anthony Joshua. Can you see people's suggestions there?
Obviously, there's a lot of money on the table. I think he was offered a great deal to fight in New York, a great deal to fight in Cardiff, and more to fight in Saudi Arabia. So it's a business, Rob. You know that, I know that, and it's up to AJ's team and to get the best deal on the table possible for him. Is it a cash grab? Ask him that. I think it's a fight that he needs to win. I would love to have seen it in Cardiff because I think that might have given him the psychological edge in Britain. I think Andy Ruiz was being difficult about that. I think they wanted it in a neutral venue. So maybe when the money came in, the neutral venue, and maybe a chance. I know AJ spends a lot of time in Dubai and other areas of the Middle East. Maybe he thought, look, this is something which is going to be different, and maybe, it's a possibility that it's a country that may be going forward in a different way. Who knows? Maybe this will be the start of something to look back on, like the Rumble in the Jungle was in Zaire. I mean, there's a lot of countries around the world where there's been difficulties. So I think as far as AJ goes, it's probably he looked at the situation, looked at what the event was going to be. He's told me that it's about the whole build-up that we're going to see over there. It's going to be about the show on the night and all of that. So he's obviously excited about doing something different. He's always talked about being a global fighter, not just fighting in Britain. He's had one in America. So this is new grounds, and I think Eddie will say at the press conference that it's a place that will want to be doing a lot more boxing and other sporting events over the next few years, and obviously they've got a lot of money, so let's see how that develops. But for me, as I've said to you already, this is an event that we are covering. We are not we didn't have the decision to go there. It was that was what was decided. We are going there, and I want to make sure that we are treated as a professional team. As I said, wherever I work, I care about my staff. That's my concern, and that we want to make sure, and I think they will be absolutely assured that and welcomed with a lot of warmth and hospitality, that they can go about their jobs in the proper manner, and that's the most important thing.
Speaking of your staff, I watched Anna Warhouse's excellent interview of Anthony Joshua. What did you make of Anthony Joshua's demeanour throughout that? We obviously have seen the headlines with regards to Lennox Lewis. What did you make of the interview as a whole? Yeah,
I thought, look, it was a different interview from AJ. I think it opened up a lot of his feelings. I think there's been a lot of confusion since and there would be, losing for the first time, coming to terms with that. Obviously, reading that you're the greatest heavyweight in the world, and suddenly, you open social media and it's people saying you're not as good as you thought you were and all that sort of stuff. That must be hard, and ultimately it's a loss. He lost in the amateurs. He was always, in my opinion, going to lose in the pros, and we didn't think it would be Andy Ruiz, but it was. So I think he's coming to terms with a lot of things, and I think that it was probably an interview where, maybe he just there was a little bit of love lost for the game or for the sport. Maybe he was just sort of rethinking his mindset ahead of the rematch. I don't think sure the rematch wasn't certainly announced. We didn't know about Saudi Arabia at the time. There was, and I think probably a lot of balls are still in the air. I think now he knows where the fight is, what the date is, what needs to be done. I've certainly seen a change over the last sort of 72 hours I've spent with him. He's very focused. He wants to win hugely. His team are talking about him fighting on for a long time. Maybe this isn't just a grabbing the money. Maybe this is a sensible, we'll take a good amount of money for this and we'll win the fight and we'll go on to even better things. But I think he's now focused on the fight. I think he'll want to get straight into training camp after this press tour finishes. It's been a long and it's been a short time trip, but it's been a long trip in many ways because of the travel and the mental tiredness, whatever. But AJ's been in great form. So has Andy Ruiz, and I think they're both itching to get into camp and get ready to rumble on December the 7th. They're fighters, and that's what they do. And I think Joshua wants to try and right the wrong, and Andy Ruiz wants to prove that it's not just a one-off and that he deserves to be the world heavyweight champion that he is. So I think it's all attention now to the training camps and to the fight itself. So yeah, I mean his demeanour is. I think he's in a great place. How you take a loss. That's what can make or break you, and I think now he's certainly got his eye on the prize, and that prize is retaining or reclaiming the belts and then retaining them for years to come after that. If he can do that, is he good enough? Can Ruiz do it a second time around? We know immediate rematches can often go the same way, but we know also rematches can be different, and there could be a total role reversal. If Anthony Joshua uses his physical attributes properly, he could make this a much more simple affair, but it's a mental battle too, and I know Andy Ruiz thinks he's going to go and do it all over again. So that's what's compelling, that's what's fascinating. I'd rather talk about the fight than all the other issues around it, because it's going to be one of the most watched fights in years. I think it's, Saudi Arabia adds a difference to it, of course it does, but I think it's all about the rematch and what happens to Anthony Joshua, and that's something that we've been involved in since the moment he turned professional in 2013, and we've been proud to be part of him. He's a fantastic ambassador, and one loss doesn't mean he's a bad guy or he's even a bad fighter. He's a very good fighter and he's a very good guy, and we're with him on this journey. Andy Ruiz has been a breath of fresh air in the heavyweight division, and listen, it's been a great media tour so far, and let's get them into camp and get them fighting.
You make a good point that I think people are losing sight of the fact that this is a very intriguing, fascinating fight. With that being said, had this fight been in New York or in Cardiff, would there have been this furore around it? I mean, you would have taken away kind of the negativity surrounding Saudi Arabia. Does that frustrate you that that's kind of lingering over what is still a very intriguing fight?
Boxing's the most unpredictable business in the world. We've been to some interesting countries over the years. We've been to some fun venues. We've been to some huge venues. We've been to some tiny ones. We've been to into backyards. We've done all sorts of things, and you never quite know. Sometimes, fighters don't make the weight. Jose Luis Castillo and Diego Corrales, their third fight never happened because Castillo was 5 pounds over, and the thing was Diego was left in tears, and you never know in boxing. There's always a story. So, people are going to talk about every aspect of this. Of course, Saudi opens that avenue up. Listen, the fight is going to happen in Saudi Arabia. As I said, we've been there. We were welcomed, and our team will be going back there. And I want to make sure that we cover it, as I said, to the best of our abilities. But it's about Anthony Joshua's fight. And that's what we've got to concentrate on. And I think that it's a sporting event, and it's an event that wherever it takes place is going to be watched by a great deal of people. And there's, I think, a real sense in Saudi Arabia that they want to do something incredible. And let's wait and see. It's exciting. It's a different challenge, and they've got a lot of pressure on their shoulders over there to deliver a spectacular event. And let's see what happens. But for me, it's about the fight.
Okay, well, it looks like we're about to get started. Adam, I'll grab you afterwards if that's okay. Still have a few more questions. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social.
No problem, Rob. Thanks.
Cheers, Adam. Picking it straight back up there, we're now after the press conference, Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua. We were talking about all things Saudi. Just finally, I know we've mentioned about women throughout this interview. Somebody I know you have a tremendous amount of respect for, Katie Taylor. Yeah. there's obviously been discussions whether or not she will be on the card. As I understand it, doesn't quite fit into her schedule, boxing in November. Would she be allowed, in theory, to box on this card? It would seem to be, undercard of such a huge fight, the perfect opportunity for her to box on the card. Why isn't she?
Rob, as you and I know, I'm a massive advocate of women in business, women in sport, and that's why I've got terrific women around me on my team, terrific men as well. It's a very mixed team. It's fantastic. We've got a wonderful director, Sarah Chenery, a brilliant production executive, Jenny Blackmore, a fantastic assistant producer, Leanne Johnson-Arneson, obviously Anna Woolhouse, Sarah Hornsby, our long-time PA, has gone on to bigger and better things. But there's a big focus, and in boxing, we were among the first people to do that. It was very much seen as a male-dominated sport, and we brought women not only into the team, but obviously in front of camera as well. And Anna's done brilliantly at that. We had Kate Abdur originally, and now Anna Woolhouse, and so that's a real thing, really close to my heart, which is what I was saying earlier. I want to make sure that everybody can do their job wherever they are, whether it's Saudi Arabia or out in the Far East, in Australia, in America, wherever we are. We want to make sure that our team, our staff, can do our best possible things and have the best possible working environment. Katie Taylor, as you're right, I'm a massive supporter of her. Also Savannah Marshall, who's reaching under the Matchroom banner, was my scholar at Sky for 4 years. Both of them could fight on the card in Saudi Arabia. I think it would be terrific if that was the case. Could they have a women's fight on the card? Yeah, of course they could. And I think that will be a real statement too. Katie is, I think, going to fight in November, so I don't think the December 7th date would work for Katie. We cannot wait to see her back. So she's going to be on a big show, I think, in November. We're just finalising that. But yeah, there's no reason why not. No reason at all. And if it's not Katie, whether it could be Savannah or somebody else, but women's boxing has become massive. So everybody all around the world needs to realise that, not just in Saudi or other countries. But yeah, it's very important to me that the women are treated absolutely brilliantly wherever we go, and that means in and out of the ring.
Yep. Moving on. You are a man who's been established in the sport for a long time. I know you're a massive boxing fan, boxing nut. What do you make of KSI versus Logan Paul?
You really are pushing me to that, aren't you, Rob? I love your interviews. There's always controversy, there's always debates, there's always, I wouldn't say there's agendas from people to say, look, let's try and throw scorn on certain things. Ultimately, it's your job to ask the questions, and it's my job to try and answer them. KSI and Logan Paul. Look, my son is nearly 12. And when Isaac Chamberlain and Lawrence Okoli were fighting, and that was a big fight, two unbeaten fighters at the O2. And I said at the day of the fight, I said to Oscar, I said, who wins the fight tonight? And he said, KSI. And I said, who? He said, KSI. And I said, no, Okoli or Chamberlain? He said, KSI. What do you mean you don't know who KSI is? I said, KSI, he's that YouTuber. He said, look him up. He's got millions of following. He's fighting tonight. And then he goes and fights Logan Paul. And you're thinking, oh, really? In boxing? Come on. How big an event was that? How big a business event was it? How many people went to watch it? People are talking about boxing, whatever levels. Look, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, British boxing has really hit the map, and people want to fight here. Lomachenko the other day came over, fantastic to have the best fighter in the world fight on our shores. We've had Froch Groves, we've had AJ Klitschko, we've had huge stadium events. It's brilliant. That's also meant a boom in women's boxing, a boom in gyms, a boom in discipline around the country and structure that boxing brings. It's brought a lot of white collar, a lot of charity events, and it's brought the YouTubers involved. They haven't chosen tiddlywinks, have they? They've chosen boxing. So look, Eddie said, I think he said he'd never get involved in something like this. Well, he has. Matchroom are our partners. We've got to look at it. We've got to decide what we want to do with it. I'm buoyed by the fact that Billy Joe Saunders and Devon Haney and great fighters might be on the card, so it's not just a sort of one-off fight. Also, they're turning professional. There's no head guards. It's on a big, proper professional show, so it's different. But yeah, there's an audience for it. Obviously, there was a huge audience last time. There's a feeling that audience, if they're watching the likes of Billy Joe Saunders as well, they're going to get into mainstream boxing, and they're going to become fans as well. We're always looking at growing the sport, so it's an interesting one to look at, and we'll look at it.
What do you make of people's suggestions that, I understand the fact that it's now professional. Last time around it was head guards and 16-ounce gloves, I believe. This is now a quote-unquote professional fight. But you've got world champions on the undercards of debutantes, professional debutantes. What do you say to hardcore fans of the sports, or even Sky subscribers who are hesitant to, as I understand it, the fight will be some form of subscription. It will be some form of pay-per-view. What do you make of fans who don't want to pay to watch two debutants fight, but they do want to pay to watch Billy Joe Saunders and Devin Haney?
As I've always said with Sky Sports box office events, we do everything we can to make them as thoroughly entertaining and wrapped around as possible, but you don't have to buy them. It's the consumer's choice. It's the customer's choice. We try and put as much as we can on Sky Sports. A lot of good fights coming up. We've got that great night in October. As I said, I'm sure we've got an announcement about Katie Taylor pretty soon. We're hoping Callum Smith too, back end of the year. There's a lot of excitement there, and we want to make sure that Sky Sports shows are excellent in their own right. But we all know that the big money, then it becomes a box office events, and we've got to make sure that they are value for money. I think we got that with Loma-Campbell last week. I think we're going to get that October the 26th. It's a fantastic card. If this is some sort of subscription decision for Logan Paul and KSI, then that's based on business models and what we feel. It's it's a difficult one because, as a boxing fan, I want to see Billy Joe Saunders because he's a great fighter, and I want to see Devin Haney and how far he'll go. Am I fascinated by the sort of the hoopla around KSI and Logan Paul and the fact that my kids want to watch that more than they do maybe even AJ and Ruiz? You've got to look at the younger generation. You've got to look at what's coming through. And my son wants to see AJ because AJ is a cool guy, and he also wants to see KSI and Logan Paul because they're heroes to them on the YouTube world. My little girl, she's 8. She's got her own YouTube channel. It's a different sort of audience, and I think if we can make them excited about the higher level of boxing, then that's fantastic. But yeah, I understand that. It's a difficult one to see Logan Paul and KSI maybe nominally top of the bill when obviously there's maybe world championship fighters sort of underneath them. But I think Billy Joe was texting KSI saying, I can't wait to be on your card. So it's a different way of looking at it. It's entertainment. We did Mayweather McGregor. Did I really think that Conor McGregor was going to beat Floyd Mayweather? Not for one moment. But he entertained us for weeks. He went into the fight. He was an incredible character. It was a theatrical show. It was fantastic from start to finish. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. It crossed over into the UFC world. Maybe both codes got more followers, more eyeballs, and if that's what this is doing, which is obviously why Eddie's got involved, and that's something we've got to look seriously at for the future of boxing.
Is there a risk of alienating the hardcore, the people who were there before and will be there inevitably afterwards?
You're hardcore, I'm hardcore. We'll always be fight fans deep down, and there's a lot of us out there. But we all know that Boxing News has a certain trade audience. We know that Box Nation has a certain trade audience. We all have boxing on all the time. The reality is that there are hardcore trade fans, and there are casual fans who like the bigger occasion, and there are different fans who want to see YouTubers fight, and there are others that want to see the women fight or charity events or whatever. There's a whole different range of the way boxing can appeal to the masses, and I think we've got to look at growing the sport. We can't sit still. We've listened to digital, social. We've changed the format. We go back to the women in boxing now, Anna presenting, and we've made changes as well from a broadcasting point of view. We can't make changes necessarily from the sport point of view, but we can have our opinions, and you and I first and foremost will always watch a 6-rounder at York Hall because we're a fight fan. But I'm fascinated by why people are tuning into KSI and Logan Paul. I look forward to meeting them in person, talking to them about what they think about their appeal and what they feel about boxing. I'm always looking at the likes of Andy Murray and Rory McIlroy and Steven Gerrard and Wayne Rooney, all these top sportsmen from different worlds who love boxing. I talked to Liam Plunkett the other day, loves the fight game. He was there for Lomachenko. He wanted to be around it. I'm sure you'll get a lot of these people that want to be around KSI and Logan Paul, not because they're trade boxing fans, but because they want to see different events. That's what it is. It is about showbiz. It is about putting bums on seats. Eddie's very good at that. Look at what Barry's done with the darts world. He's turned it from a pub sport. We've really helped with our production values, but they've turned into a mega business, and everyone wants to watch a bit of darts now. I think that maybe in 5 years' time, everybody's going to want to watch boxing at all sorts of different levels, in all sorts of ways. And as a sport that you and I love, that's only got to be good. It's got to move forwards. But I do understand the hardcore trade fans, and there is a bit of me that just wants to be at York Hall watching the best fight the best at whatever level. And I understand the sort of the fighters that are coming out saying we've worked really hard, long and hard for many years to even get to a title level, and these guys come in, they waltz in, and they're headlines at the Staples Center. But that's the world we live in now, and if my kids are talking about it, and your kids and others, and they want to see the KSI and Logan Paul fought. I mean, Spencer Oliver, I remember saying to me just before KSI came over, he said, Adam, there's this event at the Copper Box. He says, and I'm going to get to Coley Chamberlain, but I've got to help them out first. And he said, it's this KSI guy. I said, tell me about KSI. He said, I didn't know about KSI until a few weeks ago. He said, but I do now. I tell you what, he knows even more about KSI than most, and that's because he's got into it. And we have to get into it. We've got the kids. It's the next generation, and it's part of the business now. That's the truth. And then next year there'll be something else. But yeah, it's a fascinating event. Am I more excited about that than I am about Billy Joe Saunders getting back in the ring? No. But am I fascinated by it in a showbiz way? Yes, I am fascinated by it. And still, there are two guys getting in with gloves on their fists, and I have respect for any person that does that at whatever level. So, in a way, bring it on, Rob.
Nicely done. Just finally, nice easy one to end with. This past weekend we saw Vasyl Lomachenko versus Lou Campbell, an outstanding fight at the O2 Arena. Two questions: how good is Lomachenko? How good is Lou Campbell?
I thought it was a wonderful advert for boxing. I mean, we talk about the different ways of looking, the trade fans, etc. Everyone who loved boxing was in that arena on the 16,000 that were packed into the O2. They were all fight fans, and obviously the ones that watched on box office generally were as well. There were Lomachenko fans. We all hoped Luke Campbell would do as best as he could. I think a lot of people thought that he would get stopped or taken out or get embarrassed. He wasn't. He was in the fight. It was a very, very good performance for Luke Campbell. I thought, in fact, it was a brilliant performance by Luke Campbell. Lomachenko was outstanding, and he was just, I've got to say, Rob, just a privilege and a pleasure to watch. I've seen Floyd Mayweather up close. I've seen Oscar De La Hoya up close. I've seen Roy Jones up close. I've seen our great guys like Joe Calzaghe and Lennox Lewis up close, and wonderful fighters, over the last 30 years. Brilliant talents, and I would say Vasily Lomachenko is right up there with them. He's the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in my opinion, at the moment. I have huge respect for Terence Crawford and Alexander Usyk and Inoue and all the great fighters out there. Canelo, obviously, that I had the pleasure of commentating on recently against Danny Jacobs. They're brilliant. But for me, Lomachenko